Welcome to our virtual community meeting. To choose whether you'd like to listen in English or Spanish, please click the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen and select your preferred language option. Hola y bienvenidos a nuestra reunión comunitaria virtual. Para elegir si desea escuchar en inglés, haga clic en el botón de interpretación situado en la parte inferior de la pantalla y seleccione la opción de idioma que prefiera. If you'd like to see these materials more closely in English or Spanish as part of our on-demand virtual open house, please visit projectconnect.com/getinvolved. We're also placing the link to the virtual open house into the chat box for this meeting. Si desea ver estos materiales más en detalle en inglés o en español en su propio horario, visite nuestra reunión digital en el sitio web projectconnect.com y haga clic en el botón Get Involved. También estamos colocando el enlace directamente en el chat de esta reunión. We currently have an American Sign Language interpreter pinned to the screen, and we'll have ASL interpretation available throughout the meeting. So if you need ASL interpretation, go ahead and pin that person to your screen now. We're going to keep everyone muted and the chat feature disabled until we get to our engagement activities in breakout discussion groups. Hello, everyone. My name is Jackie Nierenberg, and I'm Director of Community Engagement on Transit Partnership. 2021 was a year filled with great strides and accomplishments for Project Connect. We're excited to share our project updates with you. When voters adopted Project Connect in November 2020, the desire for progress was greater than just adding more trains. The endorsement reflected the desire to build a region that embraces every community and provides connectivity for all residents to the beauty and opportunity of Austin. A more equitable, sustainable, and innovative region that lives up to its potential. These community values, which we've heard throughout our ongoing community engagement efforts, are reflected throughout each project in the Project Connect program. Project Connect is a transit plan designed for Austin. It's not a single project or type of service. It's an interconnected system that will bring a number of firsts to Austin, including a light rail system, a subway, expanded bus service, and an all-electric fleet. More on-demand circulator routes and new park and rides to provide more connections to the larger transit system. Project Connect has had a lot of recognition since the 2020 election. Last year, we had the honor of being awarded the Next Big Idea by Austin Urban Land Institute and the Rosa Parks Diversity Award by WTS International. We've reached a number of milestones, including the adoption of the Joint Powers Agreement, a blueprint for how Cap Metro and the City of Austin and the new Austin Transit Partnership will work together to implement Project Connect. We also saw the establishment of the Project Connect Community Advisory Committee and 3 technical advisory committees. We're continuing to work on many components of the Orange and Blue Line projects, including right-of-way and speech, draft 30% design and technical analysis. We've been engaging our community through working group meetings and community design workshops along both the Orange and Blue Line corridors. The new Metro Rapid project saw some great progress in 2021, including the purchase of 197 new electric buses, the nation's largest electric vehicle procurement to date. New construction contracts are awarded for the Expo and Pleasant Valley Metro Rapid lines, and the Gold Line and the Menchaca and Oak Hill extension lines are undergoing station and design planning. And in the past few months, we've had groundbreakings for the Expo line and the Pleasant Valley lines, along with 2 community update meetings. The Red Line, our Metro Rail service, has also been moving along quickly. In August, we completed the 30% design of the new McCalla station, rail station to serve the new Q2 Stadium and surrounding area. The Lake Line to Leander double tracking project reached 100% design completion in July, and track improvement construction started in October. Pickup, our neighborhood circulator service, is quickly expanding. We're excited to share the launch of our most recent pickup zones, South Menchaca and North Oak Hill, which started service in July and August of 2021. Pickup is now integrated into the CAT Metro app trip planning module for easier travel. Just last month, Pickup launched its public-facing dashboard. The dashboard shares monthly ridership, on time, and average response time by individual pickup zone. We have a number of milestones on the horizon for Project Connect, finalizing the 30% design plans for the orange and blue lines, the start of construction for Metro Rapids, Menchaca, and Gold lines, and the red lines McCalla Station. We're also continuing to work with the FTA, or the Federal Transit Administration, to secure federal funding. We encourage for more information and to stay involved. You can also sign up for a working group by visiting the website. And with that, we'll move into the specific topics we're discussing today. And now I'll pass it on to my colleague, Giannis Banks, who will be giving a preview of the various topics we'll be discussing in our breakout rooms today. Take it away, Giannis.
Thanks, Jackie. Hello, my name is Giannis Banks, and I'm a Public Involvement Manager with the Austin Transit Partnership. I'll be sharing with you a brief overview of the topics we'll be discussing in today's meeting. Many people in our community have been involved with Project Connect and the blue and orange lines over the last few years, but we want to provide a brief recap about how we got to where we are today. In 2019 and 2020, we conducted an alternative analysis for both blue and orange line corridors. We used a screening process to define, evaluate, and refine both projects. This helped decision makers and the public evaluate costs and benefits for the projects, and ultimately led to what is called the locally preferred alternative, or LPA. The locally preferred alternative is represented by a combination of mode, transitway type, and alignment, which I'll describe in the next few slides. The locally preferred alternative for both the blue and orange lines were unanimously adopted by the Capital Metro Board of Directors and endorsed by the Austin City Council on June 10th, 2020. In November of 2020, City of Austin voters approved an 8.75-cent tax rate increase to help fund the next phase of implementation for the Project Connect system plan, which enabled the blue and orange lines to move into the next phase of development. The orange line is a light rail transit service that would operate in approximately 20-mile dedicated transitway from Tech Ridge Park and Park and Ride, on the northern end of the corridor through downtown Austin to just north of Slaughter Lane on the southern end of the corridor. The corridor is currently served by Capital Metro's Metro Rapid 801 North Lamar South Congress bus route. 21 stations are planned along the route. The Blue Line project is a light rail transit service that would operate in an 8.2-mile dedicated transitway from Republic Square in downtown Austin to the Austin-Bergstrom International Airport. The transitway would operate in a tunnel through downtown under 4th and Trinity Streets. It would then cross Lady Bird Lake on a new bridge and travel along East Riverside Drive and State Highway 71 to the airport. 10 stations are planned along the route. The content we'll be covering in this meeting includes environmental resources and studies, system-wide connectivity traffic and transportation and anti-displacement strategies, and investments. We encourage you to visit our virtual open house at your convenience to learn more and provide comments. For today's meeting, we'll discuss these topics in more detail. You'll be able to join a breakout room based on which topics you're most interested in. Before we go to breakouts, we'll do a brief recap of each topic. In the environmental topic area, we'll share more information about how we do the environmental review process. This process has been underway since January of 2021 for the Blue and Orange Line light rail projects. Through this process, we study the potential effects of these projects on our community's natural, human, and cultural environments. Based on comments and questions we've received from the community, we are sharing information about what we study and why, how we do our evaluation, and the information we'll be sharing as a part of the process. The purpose of the environmental review process is to be sure we have assessed the potential impacts these light rail projects might have on the human and natural environment, identify ways to avoid or minimize those impacts, and share that information with stakeholders and the public. The process is part of the National Environmental Policy Act, known as NEPA, which requires federal agencies to consider the environmental impacts of their actions, such as construction of projects like the Blue and Orange lines, and inform the public how environmental concerns were considered in the decision-making process. The topics that are looked at include not only things we usually think of as environmental topics, like air, water quality, and threatened and endangered species, but also things that related to the human and cultural environment, like parks and recreation areas, historic buildings, community resources like libraries, and places of worship, as well as how the project may affect minority and low-income community members. The list of all the topic areas called environmental resources that are studied during the environmental review process are shown in the graphic on this slide. This graphic provides an overview of how we do the evaluation process. We start by setting a boundary around the light rail projects for each of the environmental resources we study. Within that boundary, we gather data on what currently exists. This data gathering includes reviewing existing reports, such as the City of Austin Climate Equity Report, as well as doing work out in the field, such as site visits and surveys. Next, we evaluate what would happen in the future if the project is built, called the build alternative, or if it isn't built, which is called the no build alternative. We compare the no build alternative to the build alternative to determine how the project changes future conditions and assesses whether these changes are beneficial, negative, or neutral. For any negative impacts identified, we develop strategies to avoid, minimize, or mitigate the impact. This graphic represents the entire life cycle of project development. The red box indicates where we are now, which is the NEPA or environmental review process. In January 2021, we started the scoping phase, which began the formal environmental evaluation process by providing information about the light rail projects and gathering public and agency input to help determine the scope of the issues to be addressed by the environmental study. Since that time, we've been studying various environmental aspects of the project and working to compile what we find into a large document called the Draft Environmental Impact Statement, or DEIS. In summer of 2022, we anticipate sharing the DEIS and the accompanying executive summary with the public. This information will be available to the public for review with a set comment period of 45 days. In that time frame, a public hearing will be held to present the DEIS contents. The public hearing will also include a formal public comment session. Every comment we receive during the 45-day period will be included in the final environmental impact statement, along with formal responses to each comment. Throughout the environmental review process, community members have shared input on a range of topics. In our virtual open house and breakout room discussions, we are highlighting the topic areas we received the most community interest and questions about, which are shown on this graphic. For each topic, we provide an overview of that topic and how it is evaluated. We also provide examples of potential mitigation measures should there be an impact. The terms impact and effect are used to describe positive, negative, or neutral project outcomes. The term mitigation refers to ways to reduce or eliminate negative impacts. Full details of each of the topics will be part of the draft environmental impact statement. In the connectivity section, we will discuss improvements to both infrastructure and services that will allow Austinites to more easily move the light rail system once it is built. More easily use the light rail system once it is built. In November of 2020, Austin voters approved funding for the initial investment of Project Connect, as well as a bond referendum to improve mobility and connectivity for transit, bikes, and pedestrians. Both of these initiatives are crucial pieces for the City of Austin, Austin Transit Partnership, and Capital Metro to improve the mobility and connectivity puzzle for our fast-growing region. You may be asking why connectivity is important. We're glad you asked. The more options you have to get where you're going, the more accessible an area is no matter how you get around, be it driving, walking and rolling, biking, or taking a local bus. You can see this concept in the graphics on this slide. The interior color represents the possible distance traveled from the start point at the center of the street network. The illustration on the left shows a connected street grid where there are more paths available to reach destinations near any given point. The illustration on the right displays the same size area with limited streets and connected pathways, making less of the area accessible. Improving connections for local buses and other connected services, people on bikes, people walking and rolling, and drivers will holistically benefit the Project Connect system, and specifically the blue and orange line light rail lines. Stations within downtown Austin will be underground, but there still will be opportunities to improve street level connectivity at the surface. This round of engagement focuses on connectivity at street level stations, but you can find out more about the opportunities for streetscape improvements as part of the downtown tunnel by reviewing the 4th Street Community Design Workshop materials on projectconnect.com/get-involved. It's important to note that the connectivity enhancements that will be made as a result of Project Connect and other city-led initiatives will be designed and adapted from plans, manuals, standards, and guidelines that have been adopted over the past decades. Some of these include the Austin Strategic Mobility Plan, which is ASMP, which is currently undergoing updates. A City of Austin Transportation Criteria Manual, TCM, which was updated last year. The ATX Walk, Bike, Roll, which is the city's ongoing update to the sidewalk, bicycle, and urban trail master plans, urban design guidelines, and Great Streets standards. The funds for the new connectivity infrastructure you will be seeing will come from a variety of funding resources. In some cases, this infrastructure will be built due to mitigation or construction activity directly related to the light rail projects. But in other places, it may need to be city funded, and those funds may not be guaranteed. The city is working in close coordination with ATP to identify funded connectivity improvements that can take advantage of construction impacts from the project. The exact location and type of these improvements is still to be determined. The connectivity section is divided into topics depending on the different modes Austinites use to get around. These modes are taking a bus or other connected service, like ride-hailing apps or scooters, biking, walking and rolling, and driving. The focus of this breakout session will be helping individuals understand how they might connect to and from stations and how different types of connectivity improvements may look and function. If you're more interested in the bigger picture impacts that the light rail projects will have on the transportation network, the traffic and transportation section may be a good fit for you. Next, we'll talk about traffic and the transportation network. Planning for the changes of the orange and blue line will bring to the city's transportation network requires us to consider the needs of all road users. To do this, we evaluate the network as 4 interconnected components. Traffic covers vehicular travel. Parking looks at how many spaces there are and how many are used. Transit includes all forms of public transportation. And active transportation evaluates sidewalks, shared use paths, and bike lanes. Now, we review what is already known about each, look at what is already planned in the future, and estimate what would change with the introduction of light rail. One product of this process is the Transportation Technical Report, which will be published as part of the project's environmental impact statement later this year for public review and comments. In this breakout session, we will talk more about the transportation analysis and dive into how we measure traffic, transit, active transportation, and parking. We will talk about the benefits of introducing the light rail projects to the transportation network and discuss the role of mitigation in both the short-term and long-term futures of the transportation network in Austin. We can also address some common questions we receive, like looking at right-in, right-out intersections in more detail, and how left turn and U-turning traffic can be accommodated. We can also dive a little deeper into transit signal prioritization and talk about what we know so far in terms of construction and the short-term impacts to traffic. We are hoping to discuss these and any related topics as they relate to transportation in Austin overall. If you have questions about these components work together at a station or individual user level, then the connectivity section may be better suited for your interests. Now, I'd like to turn it over to Nefertiti Jackman at the City of Austin to introduce our last breakout group.
Thanks, Giannis. Hello, my name is Nefertiti Jackman, and I serve as the Community Displacement Prevention Officer with the City of Austin. And it's an honor to share the anti-displacement work the Housing and Planning Department is leading in conjunction with Project Connect. The first thing that I'd like to highlight is the contract with the voters that was made that includes funding for anti-displacement when Project Connect passed in 2020. Project Connect is a transformational transportation project that will bring many benefits to Austin, but it can potentially burden those who lack economic mobility opportunities. Voters' approval of $300 million for anti-displacement investments with Project Connect sends a clear message that our community values growth and equity. The goal of the anti-displacement investments is to create long-term impact with a focus on creating affordable housing units and asset building opportunities that enhance people's economic mobility and prevent displacement. These investments can protect households living in areas vulnerable to displacement with solutions to help them afford to remain in their homes and neighborhoods. This is an overview of the innovative way the City of Austin is addressing some of our most challenging issues: transportation, housing affordability, and equity. Next, I'd like to speak on utilizing the equity tool and report. The development of the equity tool and report was a collaborative, co-creative process with city departments, consultants, and community members. 30 community members were selected from over 100 applicants. Participants, referred to as racial equity catalysts, contributed a total of nearly 950 hours to the development of the tool. The catalysts reviewed displacement data and gathered lessons learned from other cities that have experienced transit-induced displacement. Key components of the Nothing About Us Without Us report and tool will guide the use of anti-displacement funding, including the priority places and the priority purposes. Priority places include places in displacement risk areas within 1 mile of a Project Connect line or station. Priority purposes identified by the catalyst include affordable housing, protecting Black, Indigenous, people of color, or BIPOC-owned businesses, minimizing immediate BIPOC residential displacement, access to high-quality jobs, protecting cultural anchors, land banking, community power and capacity building, and strengthening tenants' rights. Initial investments by the city will focus on developing affordable housing, land banking, and reducing residential displacement of tenants and homeowners. So what is anti-displacement? When we say anti-displacement, what does that mean? In the simplest terms, it means the work, the strategies, the policies, and the investments that are made to ensure that people do not have to move from their homes and their neighborhoods if they don't want to. While transit investments like Project Connect can bring great benefits to communities, like making it easier for people to get to jobs, medical appointments, and other places, history has shown that transit investments can also lead to displacement of existing residents due to increased property values, rising rents, and flat incomes. Next, we'll talk about mapping displacement risk. Anti-displacement maps were created to guide how we invest, where we invest, and who we protect. The interactive dashboard shows areas within 1 mile of Project Connect stations that are at risk of displacement. It includes characteristics of those areas and other data that will help focus where to make investments. The dashboard illustrates demographic characteristics of areas within 1 mile of Project Connect stations in communities with vulnerable, active, and chronic displacement risk. To determine displacement risk, researchers at the University of Texas conducted a 3-part analysis: the presence of vulnerable populations, residential market appreciation, and demographic change. To determine vulnerable populations, the authors used indicators to identify residents who, according to academic research, are least able to absorb housing costs, which includes communities of color, low-income households, heads of households without a bachelor's degree or higher, families with children living in poverty, and renters. In 2019, housing and planning staff updated the data and maps and reorganized the neighborhood typologies as follows: vulnerable, active displacement, chronic displacement, and historical exclusion. Investments will be focused in areas with 3 different types of displacement risk: vulnerable, active displacement, and chronic displacement. I'd like to touch next on the investment strategy. The maps are one set of tools that have informed the city's investment strategy. In addition to the maps, the investment strategy has also been informed by previous research, data, existing policies, and an examination of promising practices across the country and the development of the equity tool. Understanding we have limited resources, we must be smart and thoughtful about where we spend the dollars, and we must be impactful with how we deploy these dollars. The multi-pronged approach that informs the investment strategy consider who is most vulnerable, where displacement may occur near Project Connect lines, what needs to happen to prevent displacement, when investments should be made, and how the voices of those most impacted are centered in the decision-making process. Now that we've covered the investment strategy, let's take a look at the timeline and budget. Anti-displacement investments will be made over the next 13 years with guidance from the community and the Project Connect Community Advisory Council. Our discussion today will focus on the first allocation of $60 million and the framework used to shape these initial investments. Austin has often been known as a city of innovation. Project Connect anti-displacement investments is a bold opportunity for city leaders to demonstrate our innovation by thinking and acting differently and centering vulnerable residents in our decision-making processes. We're pushing the boundaries beyond mere innovation and centering community innovation as the focal point of the city's anti-displacement investments. The equity tool has helped us to establish community priorities. Funding is available for community-initiated strategies, and critical to that success will be our community evaluation panel to identify successful grant recipients. These community-driven processes are not simply innovation, it's community innovation to propel the city of Austin toward transportation and housing solutions that are equitable for Austinites. And with that, I'd like to pass it back over to Giannis, who will help us get sorted into our breakout rooms. Giannis?
Thanks, Nefertiti. Like you said, while this marks the end of our presentation, we hope you'll move with us to the breakout sessions to provide feedback. To do that, please click the link provided in the chat, whether you're in Zoom or watching our live stream on Facebook. Once you click the link, you'll be briefly put into the breakout session waiting room, and with a minute or two, you will be invited to join the breakout session that most interests you. And just to help again with that, click on the link that we have in the chat, and this will work whether you're in Zoom or live stream on Facebook. We'll put you in a waiting room, and within a few minutes, you'll be invited to join a breakout session that most interests you, and there will be instructions in there on how to pick, that breakout session. So, looking forward to seeing everybody over there and participating, because once again, we can't do this without you. So, please join us.